Hello and welcome to the annual Autocar Professional NASSCOM Roundtable discussion. It's my honor and privilege to introduce the panel of industry leaders who are participating today in this discussion themed, what is fueling the digital acceleration in the automotive segment? The panelists are Mr. K.S. Vishwanathan, Vice President, Industry Initiatives, NASSCOM, Mr. Regu Iyer Swamy, Senior VP and Global Head of Internet of Things at TCS, Mr. R.K. Shinoy, Senior Vice President, Mobility Engineering at Robert Bosch Engineering and Business Solutions, Mr. Krishnan Sundarajan, who is the Managing Director at Renault Nissan Technology and Business Center, India, and last but not least, Mr. Shalindra Srivastava, Global Head Transportation at L&T Technology Services. Gentlemen, thank you very much for sparing your time to be a part of this very special annual roundtable discussion, co-hosted by NASSCOM and Autocar Professional. So it's my privilege to start off this discussion. To start off with, Mr. Vishwanathan, if you can just give a very brief overview of where do things stand in the Indian ER&D industry, and how much has it moved since we had the last roundtable discussion?
Thank you, Sumant. First of all, Sumatra, I want to thank you and your publication. When we met last time, the last thing, the headlines of your story said there will be NASSCOM recommends super innovation clusters for the growth of ER&D in the country, right? Such a catchy slogan. Many state governments caught on to that. And the first thing which happened is, and many state governments otherwise thinking we will do it, they accelerated that pace. And Karnataka government was the first one to possibly implement an super innovation cluster through an engineering R&D policy. It was announced in March this year, to propel the growth of ER&D industry, which is taking place. In terms of numbers, the objective is notwithstanding and COVID year, that ER&D industry continues to be the fastest growing segment for the Indian IT BPM segment. We currently clock close to about $33 billion worth of revenue. The expectation is over a period of time, with an accelerated growth, this can clock up to $65 to $70 billion by 2025, and perhaps $100 billion revenue by 2028, 2029. When I'm using the word perhaps 100, perhaps 65, the entire momentum now is to create accelerator that is required. One, of course, is a topic that you're talking about. For moving from, say, current 30 billion to, say, approximately another 65 to 100 billion business, we require additional 1 million people. And it's additional 1 million people, the real engineers. And not the programming, it's not on the coding programming engineers, people with analytical thinking, problem solving, machine learning, those kind of engineers taking place. This group which is meeting here and the Engineering R&D Council that most of them are members of are presenting the subject matter experts to create curriculum that is required that leverages technologies like IoT, technologies like machine language, technologies like AI, embedded with core engineering curriculum and creating the capacity that is required. We are confident with all this initiative, the revenue projection, what we are saying, it is going to be real. And perhaps with all these gentlemen working with us on this aspect, the 2028 to 2030 goals would also be met with, and as you rightly said, with several overs to spare is what we are currently putting the entire focus on. Last but not the least, as I speak to Government of India level and principal scientific advisors level, they're also very, very keen how to promote R&D. While I'm speaking to you, there is a group which is working within NASSCOM to work with the Government of India to how do we accelerate the R&D portion of it, perhaps in automobile, perhaps in advanced manufacturing, maybe the aerospace, maybe electric vehicles, put together all effort. So all in all, digital acceleration story is real. And what is required to do that is an acceleration of talent and the leadership and the people from that is also getting real. We are putting across. And with all this objective, our ability to scale up to say 66 to 100 billion next 7-8 years with an accelerated growth rate was in the card, which we believe will attract close to about 28% of the top 200 R&D companies who spend R&D globally do not have a footprint in India.
Okay.
40% of top 2,000 enterprises who spend on ER&D do not have a footprint in India. When they say footprint in India, either as a captive center or through service providers, our objective is to attract them, showcase the capability that we are creating, enabling ease of doing businesses, which will help get the growth in this industry that I talked about.
Right. That's very, you've shared a very good snapshot of where things stand and where things are could possibly move to for the Indian ER&D industry. Correct me if I'm wrong, in terms of the 3 top drivers for growth in the ER&D space, at least in the year 2019, were software products, semiconductors, and automotive, right?
And telecom.
And telecom.
Telecom and healthcare.
Healthcare. Right.
When I say the way, what has happened, Sumantra, you see, during the period of COVID, the way systems got engineered, the way the consumption changed, the consumption pattern, the way it was getting consumed, the way it was developed, went through undergoing change, which all the leaders in the call will explain, completely underwent a change. All this
post 2019 or during 2019?
2019 and 2020 and the last 1.5-2 years.
1.5-2 years.
Design, the way it is getting consumed, the way it is getting after sales service, everything is getting undergone a complete change, or is going and undergone. I won't say undergone, is undergoing a complete change. There's a more work happening at the intersection point of say telecom and IoT, telecom and say AI, embedded system, etc. As Shenoy will explain to you, how many things are getting embedded in the core processes for engineering itself. All of them have got accelerated in this 5 verticals they talk about: semiconductor, telecom, automobile, and say healthcare are the 4 segments which is completely grown out of proportion.
Right. Great. Thanks. Let me get Mr. Srivastava's perspective. At L&T Technology Services, I believe automotive is a growing contributor to your overall business. So where do things stand, and what are the new trends and growth areas that you are witnessing in the ER&D space? I'm sorry, you're on mute.
So first of all, thanks for inviting me for the session. So as we look at the market which is going on, there are several things which are happening in automotive industry, and looking at the trends, we at L&T Technology Services have identified EACV, we call it, electrification, autonomous connected vehicles, as one of the big bets, one of them. Now, if I really look at what it is and give you with an example, the influence of this mega trend actually is not only into the software part of it, it's on embedded technologies, it's on the powertrain part of it, lightweighting of the material, thermal management, analytics, connectivity, everything encompasses into that. So we at L&T Technology Services have taken this step. We are investing in terms of what is required, and we look at very closely on many of these things are a challenge for customers. When we talk about the ECUs which are coming, so how does it work? Where does it go? How the thermal management is? So we are looking at an overall system and developing those capabilities in-house. I mean, just to give you an example, we don't just talk about this is a big bet. We have made a vehicle which have converted an IC vehicle into an electric vehicle with all the features. It has the connectivity, it has the autonomy, it has electrification. So we at L&T Technology Services are really spending a lot in terms of those mega trends which are following up in the automotive sector.
Was this specific project a test project, or can this be commercialized and maybe you can develop solutions wherein it can be made kind of as a retrofit solution also at a later stage?
We at engineering services always in a catch-22, right? When we go to customer and tell them we can do the project, they say, show us what we have done. And we cannot show other customers' projects. So we at L&T Technology Services always believe in demonstrating what we have done. So when we have done we did not intend to commercialize it. We intend to showcase to our customers our capabilities on the full life cycle of electrification, which includes the design of e-motors, the transmission, the inverters, the converters, battery pack, BMS, chargers, onboard charger. So we have done the whole thing to show it to our customers. Now, what good has happened in this is we have generated several new things, new frameworks, new technologies. Some patents have been filed based on that. So those are the reusable components which we have developed. Anything of this which can be used in our project, we tell our customers and we try to reduce their cycle time. But intention was not to commercialize it. If anything comes out and customer wants, we will not shy away from doing that.
Let me come to Krishnan. Krishnan, you had a fairly large team of around close to 9,000 engineers there at the R&D BCI, and with both the OEMs, Renault and Nissan, really focusing on going all out on both electrification as well as connected vehicles. I'm sure your team must be extremely busy. Can you give us a brief glimpse of which are the key drivers that which are the key areas where a large part of the team are very heavily focused on?
Okay, so thank you, Shumantra, for this interesting question. And I also want to thank Autocar and NASSCOM for conducting this roundtable. So to begin with, Shumantra,
can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Yes. So as I said, if you see that the first important step towards the migration of conventional engines, conventional technology to the new technologies driving digitalization, we are super excited as a team because we are an ecosystem where naturally we have embraced many of the digital skills. So as globally Renault has rolled out their vision, we call it as Renaulution, and Nissan has rolled out their vision called NEXT. We are part of the journey where our engineers are joining the next set of technologies that should be built on the cars globally. So as the word goes, CASE is the next thing that will happen after GAFA. So connected, electrification, autonomous, and shared mobility are something that we cannot avoid working on. So our teams, I wanted to talk about one very important milestone that happened on this digitalization journey is the last two tough events that happened and stroked the automotive industry. Number one is COVID, which swiped off 25% of the TIV. We call it as total industry volume. So 25% of the revenues were just taken off from every part of the world. That means you have the remaining 75% to fuel the remaining technologies, remaining stuff, and so on. So that's a big hit for all of us. Then this hit has given us a lot of learning. What is the learning is we started looking at a lot of difficult things that we have been doing, even though it is a practice by say that we should not make prototypes. We have been making prototypes. We have started looking into fixed cost and say that fixed costs need to be optimized. And when this pressure exerted, everyone started opening up and said that can we do everything in digital twins? That means can we avoid physical prototypes, physical testing? So all the wonderful digital systems which were developed were as books in the library, but people start borrowing those library and start practicing it. That's something that happened due to the washout of 25% of TIV in the global market. So the magnitude of the losses may be different between different companies, but most of us were making losses. And during this tough time, everyone said that let's embrace technology, let's embrace digitalization, right from customer journey, customer acceptance, validating the car, developing the car, and so on. One of an important testimony for us from the R&D BCA is last year, during this time, we launched two cars, Nissan Magnite and Renault Kiger. Both of the cars have been launched with high level of digitalization footprint, wherein we have to keep most of the experts on expertise and supplier at their own countries, and we have to run out this car from the Chennai plant successfully. The first, quality results are tremendous. Sales results are absolutely good as per the business plan. And I think this is only because we all opened our mind to embrace the digital technology in the way to control the fixed cost. So this is the first topic I want to say. The second topic is, if I may elaborate, I don't know what is the timing, Sumatra. The second topic is mostly related to COVID. Yeah? So COVID, people stopped buying cars, but COVID, we also made people to work at home. We call it as télétravail in French. We make the people to stay at home and work. And sometime automotive industry was not open to allow our people to stay at home. They may say it is because you are dealing the most confidential data in the world. You have to deal with people to make the car, and you have to be at the Gemba or at the place to develop the cars. And every time when we wanted a proposal from India where we say that we can do work from anywhere, and that's the way to improve the productivity. We don't need to put 4 hours of commute behind everybody to come to the office. We are burning so much of carbon and stuff. Every time it was rejected. But during the COVID time, all the work from anywhere and work at home has been completely embraced. So right from styling data to the most confidential data of the car, we allowed the people to operate at home, enabling them to deliver for the launch of the car rather than waiting for COVID to go out. I think these are the
also
two.
Also, in a way, fuel the digital acceleration in the automotive sector, right? Indirectly.
Yes, this is the first sort of information I thought I will share in the forum, and I will come and take the question next time again. Thank you.
Since you talked about shifting some of the physical activities into the virtual world, before I move to the next speaker, I would, specific to, let's say, to the Kiger or the Magnite, no, both share the same platform, of course. What are the key 2 or 3 activities which you kind of shifted from the physical world to the digital world for the first time in R&D this year?
Okay, so the first one is, we call it as perceived quality of a car. When you develop a car, you have a fit and finish, and you have to understand what's the fit and finish and how this fit and finish need to be audited by the best quality evaluators and the best guys who craft the car. And this is something that we have digitalized, where we are able to understand the PQ, the basic geometry that was conceived in the concept. We call it a surface modeling, to the final car which was developed. So we started doing this PQ analysis remotely, number one. Number two is, generally when automotive companies are working on parts development with the suppliers and collaborators, we always go and do a physical audit at a supplier end. I also didn't know what's the big value that we have created till now, but after the COVID, we understood that. So we have been like at the supplier end, trying to watch what are they doing and how they are developing the parts to the standards what we want. This one, we said that we are going to do everything digitally. We enable the supplier industry to manage this entire protocol. They know their boundary conditions which they have to operate, and we allowed them to autonomously operate, and we started looking into the digital data and see that let's validate the part and the specification digitally. This is the second one. And the third and most important one is, even though our numerical simulation had been very strong in terms of crash, NVH and performance, all the time after the first simulation, we always tend to make a prototype and crash the car and run a lot of simulations and then get it into the road. But this time we have taken lot amount of accuracy in the calculation. We started respecting all the calculation and said that, okay, let's trust all the calculations what we built. And we moved the car directly into the homologation, and we have seen wonderful results in terms of the digital twin that has been productionized from our Chennai plant.
Okay, yep. So the difference margin is as expected, or right?
As expected, yes.
Okay, great. So let me come to you, Raghu. At TCS, you have a huge team of engineers, and also a lot of clients, and you do a lot of from the automotive space, and you do a lot of R&D, ER&D work there. But tell us, I mean, what are the advantages and key drivers of digitization in the automotive and mobility sectors? And at TCS, What are the new cutting edge ER&D activities that some of your teams are maybe working in?
Yeah, thanks, Sumantra. I think as both Krishnan and Shailendra told, a lot of innovation and I would say the need for new way of working is kind of coming up in the automotive industry. So we work with a number of OEMs as well as we work with number of tier ones in building up some of these next generation solutions. Today, I think the trend, as Krishnan told and Shailendra told, the trend of the automotive industry is towards the CASE, the connected autonomous solution. And many of our engineering R&D segments in India is in a very unique position to cater to this inflection that is going on in the automotive industry, because it needs development of not only new technologies and hardware, but it is also involves a lot of intelligence, a lot of artificial intelligence, a lot of cognitive intelligence, and building algorithms that is required to process those technologies, and also really linking up with the multiple ecosystems. So if you really look at this automotive sector, it is not like you have some need and you develop a solution working on a unilateral mode or in a monopolistic mode, but it is actually you have to work with an ecosystem. So there is a chip vendor who comes out with the latest generation of SoCs that basically has the ability to power this automotive sector and autonomous operations. So those chips are coming with from 5 TOPS to 35 TOPS to even 2,500 TOPS, whether it is Renesas, whether it is NVIDIA, whether it is NXP. Many of these customers are coming with the chips. So when you look at an autonomous car, you look at a next generation electric vehicle, it starts with the electronics, which is the chip system. And there itself, there is a lot of play. Our Indian companies and many of our companies play there in aiding that SoC designs and providing VLSI services. Second part of it, how do we really adopt it? And adoption has to happen at a very fast rate within the 12 months, 18 months. So you need an advanced information about the chipset so that we can build solution on top of it. So we are seeing that kind of readiness that is getting built and the capabilities built in this country to understand the chipsets that are available for autonomous car or electric vehicle, and then build on top of it the solutions that are needed for various OEMs and tier ones. And the advantage we have here is the ability to really transcend between hardware and software and bring in artificial intelligence and AI in a very seamless manner is the biggest difference we see with our ecosystem here in India. And yes, we have been as part of service providers for this sector for a long time. But what is more important is in the current period of the inflection that automotive companies are going through, everybody, we are able to play a very important and significant role in enabling that journey for our customers. I think that's what we see that really important actually. Yeah.
I was coming to that. TCS, I mean, automotive industry has been a customer for TCS for a long time. We have been working with many automotive clients. But what I want to understand, ever since this growth, the megatrends, the CASE or ACEs as they are called, with these megatrends gain traction, how much of a kind of spike have you seen in terms of the number of projects or the level of cooperation between TCS and your automotive clients?
I think I would say that just before COVID, there was significant growth happening in the electronics embedded segment for the previous, I would say, 2 to 3 years. in terms of building up to these new solutions. I think last year, automotive sector had a temporary blip, I would say, in the first quarter and second quarter of last fiscal year. You can see the results of many of the companies in the engineering segment. Automotive revenues have dropped in those 2 quarters. But I think from Q3 of last year, the trend is picking up. So right now, if you look at, there are many accounts where there are significant, I would say, ramp-ups and new projects are happening in this area. Not only that, we are started working with even very unconventional companies also. There are new age companies that are kind of coming up with the new solutions. For example, a company called Lordstown Motors make EV trucks. A company called Stone Ridge makes EV related software and systems. These are all new age companies. Actually, they are not the established like General Motors and Aptiv and Visteon kind of tier 1 companies, but these are new age companies. They are also willing to work with us as partners, actually.
And I would assume that such companies, the numbers were much smaller or maybe nil earlier, right? In your case,
they were not even in the radar of any of our segment companies. Actually, they are new age. They are want to put this solution very fast. They want to kind of bring about the transformation solution product very fast to the market, and we are able to engage with them. It's a new experience as well as new learning, I would say.
And just to get an idea, the automotive stroke mobility sector, in terms of contribution to TCS overall revenue, where does it rank? In terms of
if you look at my total engineering business that I have today and segment that by automotive R&D services we do, it will be close to around 35%.
Oh, that's significant.
Yeah.
That's significant. So Shenoy, let me come to you. From what I observe, as the disruptions take place in the automotive stroke mobility industry, happening in terms of positioning or rather repositioning. Many OEMs are repositioning themselves as mobility solution providers, no longer manufacturer and sellers of vehicles. And tier 1 suppliers would prefer to call them technology partners or technology suppliers, and one of them would be the Bosch. So with the kind of work that RBEI does with its huge team of engineers, can you tell us right now when it comes to the mobility stroke automotive sector, what are the 3 key demands that you're seeing from the industry, or some which you are proactively working on, seeing a very imminent demand coming up in the near future?
Yeah, thanks for the good platform. Thanks to Autocar and NASSCOM for this platform to converse. You're absolutely right. I mean, with the trend of PACE, I mean, we call it PACEs, personalization as well, because there's a lot of personalization that happens in mobility. One of the major trends that's happening is as tier 1, as Bosch, we are not just delivering single components, whether it's only to a powertrain or a safety domain or a driver assistance, but solutioning which cuts across these domains, because more and more solutions what we deliver is cross-domain. So one major trend is the cross-domain and solutioning that we have to deliver towards the vehicles. And that is something which gives rise to a lot of software development, which is going more in the direction of digital usage of AI, ML in most of the products. Simple products like earlier we said safety, but now when you talk about driver assistance, and if you are able to integrate and do, integration of signals from various sensors, whether it's radar, video, and then make sense out of it to sense the environment on the road, to take decisions, moving more and more to automated driving. Then what we are looking at is developing complex algorithm that runs on these platforms. Second major trend is moving change in the EE architecture, which means that there is no single, architecture on the vehicle that's accepted. Depending on the type of vehicle, we may have high-end compute platforms using VCUs, the vehicle control units, on which we can host all the functions that were otherwise being hosted in individual ECUs, which are having microcontrollers. But now we'll have more and more microprocessors which are there on these high-end VCUs or vehicle control units, where then the algorithm is running. And so we as a tier one are able to not just deliver the VCU, but ability to integrate features that may come from other tier one or even the OEM or the engineering service providers. This is an excellent opportunity to actually collaborate in this complete supply chain and not breaking it into three separate role plays that we used to have. With this massive change in supply chain, the way we operate, it gives opportunity to co-innovate together. And that is where the development methodology also changes. Obviously, with the speed of development that's happening, the third trend, what we see is it's no longer waterfall, where we used to have 3-4 years to develop a particular vehicle or a platform. Whereas with agile development, the complete value chain is to operate in a totally agile way, that there is a functionality being developed from even being provided, maybe a security feature being developed by engineering service provider, and then we integrate them into ECU and we deliver it to a OEM. And this has to operate seamlessly, especially features like FOTA, for example.
I see.
Where we want to update the software on a vehicle. FOTA requires obviously secure updates, and security has to be built in, but obviously it keeps evolving at a much faster pace. And this has to be released in much faster speeds than what we used to get used to before. Earlier, we were having 2 or 3 years to really release some systems, but now it's no longer possible. And we're talking about dynamically or agile. Yes, whole cycle has shrunk, and the value chain itself has sort of become
development
end to end. Correct. So these are three major things I see. The added to that opportunity-wise in the ER&D space is the amount of electronics that's coming, not just in passenger car. That is where most of the innovation was happening. But we see this getting into commercial vehicle or heavy-duty vehicles on one side, and on the side also on two-wheelers. I mean, which was a segment which typically we thought that didn't have much of electronics. But meanwhile, we have ARAS running, we have driver assistance features running on those, including radar, video, etc., coming in, and the electrification coming in. So all the three platforms, I mean, whether it's a two-wheeler segment or the small vehicles, passenger car, as well as commercial vehicles, all of them are concurrently, we need to innovate because these platforms are quite different. Each one needs different type of systems. And I think this is a great opportunity to innovate together and deliver into this market. So that's why, even though as RBI, we were already pretty large, more than 20,000 engineers, we see growing more than 10% year on year, even through the COVID years. Mainly because the amount of software that has to be developed for these systems is far more than what we used to see before. The limiting factor is only our ability to actually bring the required competencies. When you talk about the extreme high competency that's needed, who is able to develop software for these domains, which are highly complex. So this is how I see it as a role we have to play, as well as the way we can play together in this area.
Do you find any kind of skill gap when it comes to ensuring the ability to
Yeah, maybe I can attempt to answer that. Others can join in afterwards. What we see is on one side, we need extreme high domain knowledge for developing these complex systems and understand the embedded space very much. On the other side, with digital technologies coming up, applying the AI and ML in all these products. Simple thing, for example, the video analytics that's needed. For identifying, objects on the road for fully automated driving. When we tried out, for example, a system which was already developed and working in say, under circumstances like in Europe or North America, when you try out on Indian roads, obviously we have other type of traffic, whether it's the cows that are there or auto rickshaws which are there. For example, the cow was being identified initially as two people on the road. obviously, and we cannot run with such algorithm. And if you have to run, algorithm which has to detect that at a speed and take decisions, the competency that's needed are multifold. You need to know on video analytics on one side, the decision making using the AI and ML algorithm that runs on it, and to react to it. I mean, what's the right decision to be taken, and the other subsystems that have to run parallelly and at a speed that's needed. So definitely we see a skills gap, and that is where we are working intensively with many universities to bridge this gap. When it comes to electrification, for example, it is not just a software that we have to look at, but I think, as rightly said from my fellow panelists, on thermal challenges we have on the inverter or the motors that are there, as well as the topics related to the aspects of the computing power that's needed. Even vehicle control units, most of them are meanwhile liquid cooled. We may talk about having high powered microprocessors running in mobility space. But we have to definitely solve the power hungry controllers that are running on these vehicles and the heat dissipation issue that is there. So we need engineers who are able to work on thermal topics, on NVH topics, algorithm that's needed for video, radar, etc. And at the end of the day, to understand what is the feature that the end customer wants, and more from user experience point of view. So it is that is where I see that these are opportunity areas where the engineers need to be trained and industry ready, and so that they can actually engage much faster and develop these systems for the world, not just India.
Yeah. Talking about developing solutions or systems for the world, let me come to you again, Krishnan. A lot of your engineers are already working on such solutions over the years. But tell me, when it comes to the ability of Indian technical or R&D, global R&D centers to develop projects ground up for the automotive and now the increasingly dynamic mobility sector, where does India stand?
Okay, Suman. So, as you know, as a captive center, we want to be very humble about what we will deliver, and our delivery should not delay SOP of the car or profitability of the car. So this is something ingrained in our methods of taking responsibility. What I would say is the penetration of our views and our design notes or our design orders have gone up significantly in all the global programs. Why is number one is we didn't go directly to get into an autonomous car algorithm development. So we went into first something called scenario creation, where we understand what are the scenes, as Mr. RK said. We understand different scenes and see that what algorithm will suit for what market. So we first trained our people on understanding the zones of the car and started involving us from the back end to go to the front end. That's number one. Number two, again, in the global footprint of R&D of both Renault and Nissan, each center is having certain COE and certain zones of the car which they should go in a full speed. And that's where that we have seen that those zones of the car which were allocated to India is nowadays increasing more and more towards digital. And earlier, the lot amount of prototypes and lot amount of testing and understanding the chassis stiffness and all used to be the core reason for which some of the jobs were staying in the developed markets. But now, with all these algorithms built and our people to improve the regression and correlation, we are able to take all the workload into India and able to demonstrate with a clear success. This is the second aspect. Third aspect, because we are in an ecosystem working with suppliers, with the partners like TCS, they also bring lot amount of out of automotive industry and what it can be applied inside automotive industry. And that is not a chance that is offered in many other part of the world, but from the India Center, we have a chance to understand that out of automotive, whatever is happening, how can it be put into automotive? So I want to take one example of an app which we developed called Chuet. Chuet is nothing but the French word for owl, and it is to watch inside the plant what is happening by a supervisor, how many kilometers he runs a day, how many kilometers he walks a day, to collect the data in order to ensure that the vehicle quality is meeting up to the right standard, the attendance of the operators is at the right standard, and the rework time is at the right standard. But the app what we have developed with all the IoT devices, it is improving the efficiency of this guy, where he gets into more and more of planning than walking few miles and kilometers inside the plant. And when we developed this plant, we had people who had to be reskilled, retrained from a conventional plant process engineering to the guys who are able to write a Java code. Definitely, they won't meet. Please understand, you can never make a process engineering guy to go to Java. It's not about our arrogance, but there are certain traits that you can't immediately borrow. But we have put them towards something called a Scrum, a workforce where you have certain digital expertise, you have process expertise, you have industry expertise. You make them to co-learn. And with one or two projects like this, the guys started opening up their mind, and the blacksmiths, so-called blacksmiths, started thinking, okay, let's go into some agile, some Scrum method, and so on. So I think the intervention for us to skill up the people had happened in that way.
Right.
And the last point I want to say and conclude is about EduTech. We know that all the EduTech companies are coming with a wonderful menu of bridging what is needed in a tech industry compared to what's given in a conventional university. And now we are looking into all these EduTech menus and see that can we build some menu which is completely customized for RNTBCA needs that can be served for Renault and Nissan. And I'm sure that only with this open mind, our L&D team are able to embrace the EduTech. But in the old days, 3 years ago, our L&D team will say that we know how to make the cars, we know the software, we don't want to talk to anybody. But now, the mind is totally shifting towards a constructive, collaborative approach. Yeah? Thank you.
And also you touched upon this COE part, and I can, and what I've observed is that the global tech centers of many tier ones which are there in India also serve as global COEs for one area or the other. For RTBCI, and I would come to Mr. Shina also. What is your center and COE for?
When we talk about all the numerical side, we have almost all the COE. For example, whether it's crash or NVH or thermodynamics or embedded systems, both into vehicle level and ECU level, we have the COE. We have a COE in terms of connectivity of the cars, which is cut across between ISIT team, IT team, and engineering team. So these are some of the COEs we have. We do have COEs on the conventional metal side, which is stamping simulation, numerical simulation, running the CNC code for some of the plant and stuff like that. So these are something that we have built over the last 13 years. Thank you.
Mr. Shimai.
Yeah, I mean, talking on COE, you're right. I mean, meanwhile, what we see is that we have a capability to not only be part of the global COE, but also lead in certain COEs. For example, in RBI, we have strong in the microprocessor, microcontroller, the base software part, COE, or the VNV, because there is more and more SIL coming in, software in loop instead of hardware in loop for validation. The VNV COE is a strong one. HMI is another area which India is leading for the global part of Bosch. And there are certain like security, which is of course the future, and it's going to be even more important when most of the controllers, with all of them getting connected more and more. So these are some of the software heavy COEs. Obviously, then we have some on plastics and thermal, etc., on the product design, and that is where we excel. And what we are seeing is, since we need to strengthen this further, that is where through the COEs we are now connecting with our academia, so that we are able to groom engineers right from the universities coming into it. And I think these are exactly the areas where we need to groom many more engineers to be able to work in these complex areas. And the microcontroller to microprocessor transition, when it happens with more and more high compute platforms coming up, we simply don't have enough engineers who can actually architect the software very well. I mean, architecture is one weakness we have today, and the system engineering. These areas, of course, we need to focus further on. We are now looking at how to develop this competency even further, not take the traditional time of developing them over years, but to speed it up. And the program management. The program management is also a strong COE in India, but it is still not sufficient when we start leading global programs out of India.
Okay. The core COE part, I'm sorry, there was a interruption in the network. So if you can repeat that very briefly on the core COEs, which are the core COEs for for Bosch, the RBI?
Yeah, the some of the core COEs, one is on the base software, the second is on HMI, third one is on the V&V, including the software in loop, which is a big growth area because more and more is going to be on the software side to validate our systems, including digital twin, etc. The other aspect was related to HMI because more and more products are having HMI now, whether it's mobility and beyond, and security and functional safety. So these are top 5 or 6 COEs where we are playing a solid role, leading them across the globe.
Okay, good to know about that. So Mr. Vishwanathan, as we come towards the end of this discussion, two key things I would like to learn from you, being a representative of the industry body. What are the strategies that are being adopted to strengthen India's share in the global ER&D industry? And also in link to that, how can India really replicate the amazing success in the software industry, global software industry? How can it replicate in the ER&D arena as well?
You know what Raghu, Shail, RK, as well as Krishnan said, fundamentally, the business is changing. Business is changing. Its software is enabling and powering the businesses. I'm not saying any arrogance, etc. There is an increased belief if there is one country that can solve the embedded interface all put together, hardware, software, cell, SOC all put together, is going to be this country, right? And mind you, the opportunity is for us to lose. So in that context, what is available to us is a huge canvas. Is exactly what we've identified, notwithstanding the COEs and skills that Raghu and Shail talked about, what is required. I think there is an aggressive program required to showcase the, notwithstanding the talent pool that is required for the future, the current talent pool, what we have, that story is not understood well. You know, just to inform recently, just to celebrate the engineering R&D innovation that is happening in the country, the entire community got down together to run a program for India Advantage for Engineering Innovation. Almost all the companies that I'm talking about in this panel, they were all part of the group. All of them successfully showcased their case studies. All of them won an award, or perhaps multiple awards, to showcase the engineering innovation that is happening in the country. The first time ever in the last 10 years, we have attempted that in Engineering R&D Council at NASSCOM and in India to recognize engineering innovation happening here, right? The impact of that is several global leaders who took part in this deliberation, several global leaders who were appraised thereafter saying that such an award has been won by their companies or their partners in India are now tweeting about it, talking about it outside, the power and prowess of engineering innovation from the country. That has happened, that is working for the good, that we need to act. A. B, secondly, all of us are nice. As you would notice, even this call of 5 people, they collaborate with each other while they compete in the global market together. But they collaborate, they bring that cohesiveness together. How do we showcase our togetherness in the global market in terms of presence? Perhaps take 2 markets, Europe and US, and the people there still don't know our complete strength. How do we showcase? That is second. Third, which is said, 40% of global R&D organizations do not have a presence in India. But there's still perception is that we are the so-called software in a traditional sense. How do we showcase that? The 3 priorities. But you know, I wouldn't say that replicate the success of IT software industry. The situations in 1990s, situation in 2000 are different. Situation in 2021 is completely different. I'm repeating what I started at the beginning. If this industry has to reinvent itself, this ER&D is going to reaccelerate itself for the rest of the country, because the way systems are designed, consumed, and I heard the new way, not only ACEs, is PACEs, personalization, and completely is changing. And the gentlemen here hold the key to their success. All the wish to them, all the best to them.
Indeed, indeed, and also as the car, for example, as we knew it, is becoming increasingly a mobile on wheels. I'm sure there'll be a lot of convergence, and and software will be very key. And in fact, one key mega trend, the electrification, will also play a key role. Before we and one very quick words from each of the panelists on. I'm very keen to understand this. India has really, made its intent clear in terms of, how it wants to promote electric mobility, mass scale electric mobility. So, do you think that could really give a boost to the ER&D industry as well? And what are India's chances of becoming a global global leading market base, both in terms of as an ER&D industry, but also as an EV industry? Starting with Raghu.
I think the push what the government is doing for electric vehicle is really, I think, would enable a lot of technologies to emerge within the country. It's not, we don't have to go outside that, because then there will be an ecosystem developing for batteries. We will have companies like us who will do the battery management software, and then you will develop electric motor ecosystems and all. So it is definitely going to leapfrog a lot of technologies, and that investment will actually indirectly support a lot of technology development. And companies are very ready to kind of catch hold of that technology opportunity and support that development. In fact, we are actually working with a European OEM, not for their markets in Europe or in the developed markets. We are developing the car for them here in India to be launched in India actually. And that actually, even though they are launching with an initial version of conventional IC engine, but the 2023 and other plans they have is to bring electric vehicles to this market. So we will bring some of that technology and put that technology to accelerate that EV adoption. And it is also like you will find that our own Tata Power, we are helping them install around chargers in Mumbai for creating the charging ecosystem. So
as part of that one universe program, right?
Because you need the infrastructure for electric vehicles. So there is a software, there is a subscription management. How do I go and charge for that and all of that? So a lot of these technologies in-house in India by this government move, I feel will definitely kind of fan out, and every one of us are very excited to support that.
Mr. Srivastava, your views quickly.
Yeah. So a few things I want to quote. One, I think the whole pandemic has really proved how agile, how adaptable we are. And I think that has really given a boost. Whatever we are talking about of ER&D spend and others, I think this has really helped in terms of showing that we are agile, we can change from conventional to digital and so on, right? So I think that's one thing which really has helped us to look into the different aspect of business. What we look at as a part of overall thing, like Mr. Raghu said, is while government of India is supporting and things will happen, and more than only the vehicle, I think the critical part becomes the infrastructure, right? So charging and other things.
The whole ecosystem.
The whole ecosystem has to work on. And I think in India, two-wheelers will pick up much faster than four-wheelers, because I think with some Arthur and others coming, we have seen that. And I think that's where a lot of innovation will go, because people are also looking at the rising prices of petrol and others and trying to see if we can move on that side. So while we are talking about, when we talk about electrification and autonomous, we generally look at the passenger vehicle. But like Mr. Shenoy also said, it's commercial vehicles, it's off-highway vehicles. Everything will be seen, and India surely, like Mr. Vishnasan said, is going to be playing a critical role going forward in aces, paces, or cases, whichever way you want to put it. I think we are placed well, And I think we are an agile country, which we should be able to adopt and deliver world-class solutions across.
Mr. Shinoy, your last word.
Yeah, I think before I give a last word, one thing I want to acknowledge is I think world has seen our resilience through COVID. I guess most of us were able to keep up to the promises in terms of all the software deliveries and product deliveries that had to be done. And I think including our partners, all of us worked through it. And I think with remote access to labs and ability to work from anywhere, etc., I think we have proven that we are resilient, and we are able to deliver through any sort of environment to the world. Coming to the electrification, of course, I fully agree. The opportunity in India is, multifold. One is on the segments. I think rightly so, the 2 and 3 wheeler has an opportunity where we need India-specific solutions, and there are a lot of local development that's happening, and we will see a big change in next 2 to 3 years of these systems coming onto the road. And second is with the infrastructure push that's coming in, whether the charging infrastructure and renewable energy that's will pump it further. The need or the possibility to bring more electrified vehicles is quite high. Of course, the range anxiety is quite different in India. I think for the largest cities, our range problem will not be there. So the passenger car and the power requirements are different. And I think with that segment, we're talking about 50 kilowatt or 70 kilowatt systems, which I'm sure will be developed more and more for local market, and that will penetrate much more here. And I think it's a great opportunity to collaborate across the supply chain to bring them to the market, which will help the ecosystem, the environment, as well as business itself overall. So I think we have an excellent way in front of us.
Okay, and from you, Krishnan, your thoughts, please.
My last 2 cents on this EV market, I will split it into one related to local industry and second related to as a tech R&D, what can we leverage from that. As a local industry, and this is what I cited in the last CM meet, is the roadmap towards electrification is solid by the government. That means we cannot negotiate a lot in terms of carbon dioxide emission. So that means the ecosystem shall be built by all the local partners in order to go there. And since the journey is going to be difficult and the government has completely acknowledged the difficulty, they have introduced an interim goalpost called ethanol. So that means the biofuel. So even the biofuel is a method in order for us to ready up the infrastructure and go towards the lowest level of carbon emission. And I'm sure that the ecosystems, whatever is needed for electrification, will be developed in terms of infrastructure, suppliers, and most importantly, safety and security. That means the firemen who will come at a press of button. Yeah, that's about the local market, and I think we all can enjoy this journey by actively stacking the techno bricks that are needed to go towards this lower carbon. In terms of EV as a potential for all the R&D centers, I think since there is lot amount of numerical simulation and lot of data that is involved in development of these cars, most of the global development EV related topics are always offered to India now, and more in the last 2 years, we have been looked upon as a sweet spot where we are able to generate lot amount of softwares, validation, and checking of those energy management system in a constructive way. So I think in a way, both the aspect, it's going to be favorable for India.
In fact,
my prediction is
yes.
20 years back, 25 years back, nobody ever thought India will be the two-wheeler market for the world. What I hear from the gentleman, an electric vehicle will be the designer producer for the world.
Indeed. And as you little while ago mentioned, the kind of opportunities that are being thrown up by all these developments in the mobility world, they are there for India to lose. But I'm sure none of the organizations that are being represented here in this panel discussion would like to lose those opportunities, and would really gear up to tap them and really, and in a way, not only propel their own organization, but also propel India in the global ER&D industry. So with on that note, with best wishes to all of you gentlemen, Mr. Vishwanathan, Mr. Ayaswamy, Mr. Shinoy, Mr. Sundarajan, and Mr. Srivastava. Thank you very much for this wonderful discussion on what is fueling the digital acceleration in the automotive segment. So wishing you and your organizations all the very best. Please take care and stay safe. Goodbye.